Om Krim Karalavadanam Ghoram Muktakeshim Chaturbhujam Kalikam Dakshinam Devyam Mundamala Vibhushitam. Om, I meditate upon that Kali who is awe-inspiring. I pray to that terrifying goddess, Karala Vadanam Ghoram, whose hair is wild and free, who has 4 arms, Muktakeshim Chaturbhujam. I pray to that Kali, who is the southward facing goddess, garlanded in a garland of heads, Mundamala Vibhushitam, Dakshinambikam. Sadhyaschana Shira Kadaga Vama Dordva Karambujam Abhayam Varadam Chaiva Dakshinodvada Panikam. She holds in her upper left hand a sword. In her lower left hand she's holding a severed human head. She assures fearlessness and grants boons with the poses of her upper right and lower right hands respectively. Mahamegha Prabham Shyamam Tatha Chaiva Digambarim Kantavasakta Mundali Galadhrudira Charchitam Karnavatam Satanita Shavayugma Bhayanakam Ghoradam Stram Karalasyam Pino Natapayodharam Shravanam Karasanghathai Kritakanchim Hasanmukhim Srikka Dvaya Galadrakta Dhara Vispuritananam. Her skin is black like the color of a dark, splendorous storm cloud. She is absolutely naked, clad in only the 10 directions. Her neck and body are stained with the blood dripping from the garland about her neck. She is girdled in human hands, or the hands of dead men. Her 2 lips are stained red with blood. She smiles sweetly. Blood trickles in rivulets down the corners of her lips, framing her beautiful face. Her 2 earrings are made of the corpses of infants. Ghorarava Maharodrim Smashanalaya Vasinim Balarka Mandala Kara Lochana Tritayanvitam Danturam Dakshina Vyapi Mukta Lambika Chochayam Shavarupa Mahadeva Hridayo Parisangstitam. Her 2 fangs are terrifying, but her 2 breasts are comely. She roars terrifyingly, Ghoraravam, displaying her anger, Maharaudrim, but she is Hasanmukhi, full of sweetness and joy and intoxication. She dwells in the cremation ground. Her 3rd eye resembles the mandala, the circle of the freshly risen sun. Her hair falls to the right side because she is stepping over to the left. She stands atop the chest of Sadashiva in the form of a corpse. Shivabhir Goraravabhir Chaturdikshu Samanvitam Mahakalena Cha Samam Viparitara Sukha Prasannavadanam Smeranana Saroruham Evam Sanchintayet Kalim Dharma Kamartha Siddhidam. All about her in the cremation ground, jackals are howling, filling the air with their dreadful shouts. She is ever eager to unite in playful love with Mahakala Bhairava, her consort. She is pleased and quick to answer any and all prayers. The Divine Mother Kali should always be meditated upon in this way for the attainment of all that is good in life, including liberation and spiritual empowerment. Om Yathagner Dahika Shakti Rama Krishne Sthitahiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Saradam Pranamamyam Naumi Chit Pratibham Devim Param Bhairava Yoginim Matarmana Prameyam Shashula Bhuja Kritaspadam Param Bhairava Yoginim. I pray to that goddess Parā, who is inseparable from Bhairava, who is that flash of insight whereby consciousness becomes aware of herself. I praise that goddess who abides in the lotus of my heart in the Trishulabja Mandala. I praise her who manifests herself in each and every moment as the trinity of knower, knowing and known, Matar, Pramatar, Pramanam and Prameyam. I meditate upon that goddess and the trinity of goddesses who are all established upon the trident. I meditate upon Kali Kala Sankarshini, who is the one in whom all of this appears. Om Shri Kali Devye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Sarvarpanamastu. Jai Ma. Jai Ma. May this be an offering to Sarada Devi. So, you guys, last week we asked a very, very important question. Who is Kali or what is Kali in Shaiva Tantra? So often we think of things like in terms of Shaktism and Shaivism, but in truth, they're one and the same tradition actually, because it's a tradition that can be traced back to the revelation of Lord Shiva called the Agamas or the Tantras. So all of this is called Tantra, but by the word Tantra, we essentially mean a kind of book. And that's essentially all it is. It's a genre of spiritual literature that became very popular around the 5th or 6th century AD. And of course, it reached its height, arguably in the 10th century AD or the 11th century AD. But anytime between the 5th century AD to the 12th century AD, or maybe as late as the 13th century AD, this period can be called the classical tantric period. And classical because many of the texts had been presented in Sanskrit. That's what makes it classical. So this is the classical tantric period because the tantric material that we have from this period is available in Sanskrit. But not all tantras are in Sanskrit. And by the way, even the tantras that are in Sanskrit have, of course, a strong regional flavor because the tantras that we find in Kashmir, they're composed in Sarada script, which is different from Devanagari. But of course, most of them are in Devanagari, but some of them are in a Malayali script called Grantha. And of course, the tantras that I had access to growing up, a lot of them have been Sanskritized, but a lot of them were presented to me first in the form of the Tamil language. So looking at the Tirumantiram of Tirumular or the Tirumurai, these are tantras. They're styled as tantras. They're called tantras. Like Tirumantiram is composed of a few different tantras, but they're told in Tamil. Even the Raurava Agama, I first encountered it in the Tamil language. And then there's a section in that Agama called the Shiva Jnana Bodha, which of course has been Sanskritized. And as we studied it together, we studied the Sanskrit form as to be as inclusive as possible. So this is what makes the classical tantric period classical, is that many of these texts are in Sanskrit. But then, of course, after the Mughal invasion in the 12th, 13th century, we enter into a different period, medieval India. And this takes us into the post-classical tantric period. So here we get like Hatha Yoga traditions. We get an early text here would be like the Shiva Samhita. And then, of course, Gorakshanath and that whole lineage of Nath Sampradaya will give us so many Hatha Yoga texts. And then throughout the medieval period, this Tantra is being developed. But the temple culture that was established during the time of the classical tantric period, like when Tantra was at its height, that continues to this very day. So when you go to a temple, anywhere in India or really anywhere else in the world, the style of puja that the the style of ritual that the pujari or the purohit, that the priest is performing, is decidedly tantric in nature. So it uses tantric mantras, bija mantras that appear in the tantras. The temple itself, the architecture of the temple itself, which is supposed to represent a mandala or a yantra or represent ultimately the human body with its various avaranas, various layers, that is coming from the agamas. So down to like temple architecture, that's being taught in the agamas. The ritual that you perform daily or on special occasions, that's all coming from the tantras. And of course, the mantras. Arguably, the whole ritual is constituted mainly of mantras. And those mantras are all being revealed to us in these tantras, in these agamas. So the word agama and the word tantra can be used interchangeably. And these tantras, these agamas, are the foundation for all temple culture in India. The architecture of the temple, the performance of rituals in temple, it's the foundation for the Guru Parampara, like the initiation sequence in which one is given a mantra and brought into the worship of a particular deity. It's all pervasively present in India. And arguably, and of course nowadays all around the world also, and arguably what is taught in the Tantra is there in the Veda. So almost all of this can be traced back to the Veda. And of course, one principal Veda that we take very seriously insofar as we're talking Tantra is the Yajur Veda. There we get so many names for Lord Shiva. There Pashupati is worshipped as the ultimate principle of reality in the Sri Rudram. And of course, in that Sri Rudram, we get at the very heart this mantra. But of course, also in the Yajur Veda, we get a series of 5 mantras: the Sadyojata mantra, the Vamadeva mantra, the Aghora mantra, the Tatpurusha mantra, and the Ishana mantra. So these 5 mantras are what starts the tantric tradition off, you could argue, as we described last week. So all of this can be called the tantric transmission or the agamic revelation. So tantras and agamas, these are types of texts. And these are the texts that inform both Shaiva and Shakta Tantra. So sometimes you'll see practitioners refer to the tradition broadly as Shaiva Shakta Tantra, which is kind of saying, like, what are two synonyms? I don't know. In Sanskrit, it's easy. You have so many different synonyms like Naga and I don't know, Bhujanga or something like, or Kumbha and Gata or something like that. So Kumbha, Gata, Tantra. It's like, it's kind of redundant because the moment you say Kumbha, you've already implied that which you're referring to when you say the word Gata. Kumbha and Gata are both words that are synonyms, meaning they both refer to the same entity, namely a pot. Unless you smoke a lot of pot, and then it might seem like there's two different words here. But they're the same word, kumbha and gata. They both refer to the same thing. Or like shesha or naga or something like. Actually, shesha means leftover, like avashishyate. But you can think of adi sesha, naga or sarpa. I think that's a good example. Naga, sarpa. You can say it refers to the same thing. But similarly, we say Shiva and Shakti refers to the same thing. Shiva swabhava iti Shaktihi. Shiva swabhava eva Shaktihi. She is verily the essence of Lord Shiva. In other words, there's no difference between Shiva and Shakti. But in one sense, it makes sense to talk about them separately because they refer to different aspects of that one reality. So you'll hear people say that this is the tradition of Shaiva Shakta Tantra, or some will just say it's Shakta Tantra, or some will just say it's Shaiva Tantra, which brings up a lot of confusion actually. Who exactly is Shiva? Is Shiva the Pashupati of the Yajurveda? Is he the Rudra of the Sri Rudram? And is Shiva the Sadashiva of Shaiva Siddhanta? And in the Siddhanta, is that Sadashiva the same as Shavarupa Shiva? And how does Mahapreta, Shavarupa Shiva, compare to Bhairava, who is the emphasis in the middle and the left hand paths? And how is Bhairava related to Bhairavi, or more importantly, to Kali, as she comes to be called in this path? And of course, Kali, the goddess, can be understood in so many different ways. And so this all becomes a mess when you start thinking Puranically. So once you involve the Puranas, if you take, say, Devi Mahabhagavata Purana or the Devi Bhagavatam, or you take any of the Shiva Puranas like Linga Purana or Skanda Purana or something like that, things get really confusing because then we start to think of all of this in a mythological way, which can be very helpful in one sense, but can also be very confusing in another sense because now you're thinking of all of these entities as like characters in a storybook, and it's not to say that's not what they are, but they are philosophical principles referring back to the one reality which you are. So when I'm talking about Shiva, whether that's Sadashiva or Mahapreta Padmasana Shiva, or whether I'm talking about Bhairava, or whether I'm talking about Kali, in essence I'm talking about one and the same thing. I'm talking about consciousness. So, in one sense, we could burn all of these books. We could burn all the Tantras. We could burn all the Puranas. We could throw all the Vedas into the ocean. It wouldn't change a thing about the ultimate nature of reality. Because right now, I'm looking at it. There's Viranatha, there's Carl, there's Asha, there's Chris, there's Patria. I hope I'm saying that right. Patra means vessel, actually. Patra. So when we worship the Devi, we fill a vessel with wine and we call that the Arga Patra, the vessel of wine. And then there's Pushpa Devi. Heather Ma is there. Rita, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Colleen, there you are. Jaima, Jaima. Lekha, Yashodhara, Brandon G, Seamus, and all of you. It's so nice to see you. Jayarata. But notice, this is very important. If all the books were to be burnt overnight, and I mean, that was the project of the Mughal invasion, a lot of it was destroying temples and burning books and whatnot. But if even everything were to disappear right now, it won't change one thing: that reality in which all of these names appear, in which there is a Viranatha and a Pushpa and a Heather and an Asha and a Rita, like in which all of these forms appear and disappear, that is the reality that I'm talking about. Hey, Chris G, good to see you. Jai Krishna. So this is what I'm talking about when I say Kali, when I say Shiva, when I say Bhairava. In fact, it's what we are essentially talking about when we say Brahman or when we say Buddha nature. To one extent, it's almost what we mean when we say Dharmakaya or when we talk about the clear light of the void, as per the Gentong interpretation. Like there are all these different names, but you know what? The names are important though, because the different names that describe the absolute reality are often different emphasis points. So they emphasize different aspects of that reality. So when we want to emphasize the dynamic aspect of reality, we refer to the goddess traditions. And now I was describing last week, the goddess traditions emerge within the Shaiva tradition. And that's what I want to explore a little bit more with you today. So I think the lecture is going to be called The Four Main Goddesses of Tantra. That's ultimately what I think I'm going to call this lecture. And you know what? It can be approached in so many different ways. I mean, the thing about the Tantric goddess tradition, that is to say, the Shakta Tantras, there are so many different sets of Devis, of goddesses. So you might have heard of the Ashtamatrikas. So there are 8 mothers. Actually, I guess the more ancient form of this would be the Saptamatrikas, the 7 mothers. And there's a reference to them in the Mundaka Upanishad even. There's a mantra in there describing the 7 prongs of fire. And these 7 flames, these 7 tongues of flame might be the first reference to these 7 mothers in the Vedic transmission. Anyway, so you might have heard of the 7 or 8 mothers, and then of course you might have also heard that these 8 mothers preside over another set of 7 mothers each. So matrika, the word matrika means mother actually, but it has the connotation of matrix. So the time-space matrix, that which conjures up this limited reality in which we have our being, that's the matrix. Wake up, Neo, you're in the matrix. But what is the matrix composed of? This is a profound question actually. Insofar as this is a matrix, and who can deny that it's a matrix insofar as it's a lattice of time, space, and form? But what is that made of? What is the matrix constituted of? Duh, green letters on a black screen as per the 90s movie. No, it's made of, actually, really, actually that, it's made of code, or it's made of symbols, numbers, or letters. So for Pythagoras, numbers, that's very important. The whole universe can be understood in terms of numbers. But here we say those numbers can be understood in terms of aksharas. Actually, this is wordplay because is the first syllable. What do you call it? A phoneme. Phoneme in the Sanskrit syllabary. And ksha is the last one. Technically, it's ha, but we add ksha to round it out into 50. So and ksha. So when we say akshara, kshara means to destroy. So akshara means indestructible. So these are the primordial building blocks of reality. They're called aksharas. But they're through to ksha, meaning I, u, ra, la, e, aing, o, ao. Gang, kang, gang, 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 chang, chang, jang, jang, yang, dang, dang, nang, dang, dang, nang, bang, 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 mang, yang, rang, lang, bang, shang, sang, hang, lang, shang, or something like that. You can list the matrikas, So there are 8 sets of 8, which give you 64. And there are ways to understand the matrikas that generate like 50 matrikas. You can generate like 51, 52, you can generate 64. But these are all seen as the little mothers, meaning the matrix or the thing that codes for the matrix, which ultimately comes down to language. So the Ashtamatrikas have to do with speech, with language, with articulation. So this is a set of 8. And of course, the list is always changing, right? From Tantra to Tantra, the names of these goddesses might change. So they might be Brahmi, Maheshwari, Vaishnavi, Kaumari, like different names for these various goddesses. In the Chandi, we meet them actually, these Saptamatrikas, in the Uttamo Charita meaning the last story, right? The supreme story. Anyways, that's one set of deities you might have heard about. There's, of course, the 8 over 8 gives you 64. So you might have heard of the 64 yoginis. So 64 yoginis are to some extent related to the Ashtamatrikas. But it's not just Matrika. There's also the Malini, which we'll talk about on another occasion. So Matrika is when you arrange the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet from A through to Ksha, so Aksharas. This is the exoteric form of the Sanskrit language. But there's an esoteric form of presenting the Sanskrit language also, and that's called Malini. In fact, that's the secret revelation of the text called the Malini Vijayotaro Tantra, which I'd like to talk to you about this evening. Malini there means the goddess garlanded in letters. Sometimes you'll see Kali is depicted as wearing like 50 heads around her neck. So those 50 heads obviously refer to the 50 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. She is Malini. She is the goddess garlanded in 50 letters. But Malini is also a technical term in Tantra. It refers to a different way of arranging those letters. So instead of I, now we have something like na, ra, like na all the way through pa. And it's a very counterintuitive way of arranging the letters. This is called the esoteric order of letters. But they're both important. Matrikas are sometimes used in a male context, and the Malini is sometimes used in a female context, and they're both like installed into the chakra, into the lotus petals of the mandalas. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but essentially I'm saying that there are goddesses that correspond to these things. And Pujama, I haven't forgotten. I am still working on a translation of the Karpuradi Stotram. I was just thinking of you today because I was just working on it, but it's coming. It's coming. We're still just word by word. It's because it's so like esoteric that there are things in there where it's like I haven't decided if Swairam Asite means in an unrestrained way during the darkness of a new moon night, or if it means, oh, dark, unrestrained one. You know what I mean? There are like phrases in there that I'm not really sure about, and maybe I'll get some help looking over it. But anyway, give me some time on that. But there are all these like coded things, in the text. And so Malini, Matrika, understanding this allows us to interact with the tantras in a very subtle way. So you might have heard about the 8 yoginis or the 64 yoginis, 8 Matrikas. You might have heard of the 15 yoginis. In fact, We talked about them last week, and I didn't really get a chance to go into them. Today, hopefully, Ma willing, if she permits us, tonight we can really like dive into the 15 yoginis and map them onto the faculties of your very own body, your very own mind. You can see that as I'm talking about these goddesses, I'm not really talking about some mythological figures that exist out there. In fact, those only really exist because I exist. I mean, just think about it. If I wasn't here to experience these goddesses, where will they be? Mother, you try to dance if you don't have me to stand on. That's the idea. Without consciousness, where will she dance? But the idea is, where is she? She is in consciousness. She is not even the object dancing. She is the dancing in and of itself. So this Bhairava that we are, consciousness, contains within it as its innate power these 15 yoginis, these wild cremation ground spirits, symbolically represented, actually refer to these faculties called the five organs of perception, the five organs of action, the five pranas, the eight matrikas correspond to the powers of language, etc., etc. So you might have heard of the 15 yoginis or the 16 yoginis. You might have heard, they're called kalas, kala devis, like Nitya Kala, Nitya Shodashi, and the others. You might have heard of the eight devis. You might have heard, of the 10. So Arghya Patrama here is telling us about the link between exoteric forms of tantric goddesses and their esoteric equivalents. So you could say maybe just for fun, you could say the exoteric Parā or the exoteric Matangi is Saraswati. The esoteric Saraswati is Matangi. The Vamachara or the kind of Kaula Saraswati is Matangi. And then you could say the exoteric Lakshmi is mirrored by the esoteric Kamala. Or we could argue Lalita Tripura Sundari. Actually, that argument can also be made. And then you could argue that the exoteric Durga is actually the esoteric Chamunda or Kali Kala Sankarshini. So like Kali, Matangi, of course, Kali, Tara, Shodashi, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamastaka, Dhumavati, Bagala, Matangi, Kamala. These are known as the Mahavidyas, and now they're very famous. They're, of course, very secret deities, and at one time, they might have each and every one of them commanded unto themselves a cult of worship. So it's unlikely, probably, that all 10 were worshipped. I mean, probably you might belong to one tradition, someone else might belong to another tradition, and in the context of that tradition, that deity is supreme. And in the context of this tradition, some other deity is supreme. But now we think of them as a group. So we have the Mahavidyas, and there are 10 in number, the Dasha Mahavidyas. But that is also a list that is constantly shifting. Oh, I forgot to mention Dhumavati and Bagala and some of the more secret tantric ones. But like, yeah, I'm worried that Patrama will smite me. Kali, Tara, Shodashi, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Chinnamastaka, Dhumavati, Bagala, Matangi, Kamala Devi. Just so we acknowledge all the Mahavidyas. Kalyadi Dasha Mahavidyabhyo Namaha. But anyway, there are 10 Mahavidyas, and that list is also constantly changing, right? Like sometimes Durga is included, sometimes Lakshmi is there instead of Kamala. The names exactly as to what the 10 constitute, that changes all the time. And in Bengal, where these 10 deities are very eminently worshipped, there's an effort actually to sync them up with the 10 incarnations of Vishnu. Because in Bengal, there's a big presence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, a lot of Vaishnavas there, but also a lot of Shaktas, and they're kind of like cataclysmically coming together, creating very beautiful confluences. For instance, this coming Friday, you should all know this Friday is the Kal Ashtami, the waning eighth day, so it's a half moon, and it's attributed to both Krishna and Kali. So it's the birthday of Sri Krishna, Krishna Janmashtami, but it's also Kali Jayanti. So I think that's kind of beautiful that they're both the same, actually, Kali and Krishna. Some say Krishna is an avatar of Kali, not of Vishnu. So in Bengal, you see this kind of attempt to link the Mahavidyas to the Mahavataras, the Dasha avatars, like Matsya, etc. Okay, so having said all of that, I think Parashurama, the axe-wielding, Kshatriya-hating Brahmin, he, I think, matches Chinnamasta. And that has to do with like Rahu, Ketu, or something like that. I'm not going to get into that now. But the point I want to make at this juncture with you is that you've probably encountered, right? You've probably encountered many different sets of goddesses. Yeah, Jayanti means birthday or emergence day. So yeah, we have the 64 yoginis, we have the 8 matrikas, ashtamatrikas, along with their ashtabhairavas, their bhairava consorts. We have the 15 yoginis, the Panchadasha yoginis, or the Shodasha yoginis, the Shad-dasha yoginis, meaning the 16 deities. We have the 10 Mahavidyas. So already you can see by now there's so many different ones. And then Yashodhara is kind of whispering to me, like off to the side here. There's an even more esoteric list. And actually, we're going to talk about them a little bit tonight, if you don't mind, if they don't mind, if they would be so kind as to allow me. Anyway, I think somebody is rustling. Let me go and find that unmuted. I'm on a witch hunt. No, okay, got you. Okay, so There's another set, and we'll talk about this set. This set is really important for tonight, actually. This is known as the Dwadasha Yoginis, meaning the 12 yoginis or the 12 Kalis. So this comes from the Krama tradition. And there we learn about the 12 Kalis as emanations of Kali, who are movements, dynamic movements within the one Kali, who is beyond, arguably, who's the 13th Kali. So there's that. There's a set of 12, which is a very esoteric set. There's a slightly more popular set of 16 or 15. There's the much more popular set of 8 or the set of 10. So there's so many different sets of Devis. And so when I say I want to talk about the four main goddesses of Tantra, it's like you have to ask, what set of four am I referring to? Because there are so many sets. So could this be Jayanti and Aparajita and Raudri and Kali or Jeshta, some people say? Or could this be the four main transmissions like Kubjika Mata from Pashchima Vaktra? Could this be Lalita Tripura Sundari from Dakshina Vaktra? Could this be Parā Devi from the Purva Vaktra? Or is this Kali from the Uttara Vaktra? Like, is that the set of four that I'm talking about? Jeshta, Raudri, Kali, Jayanti, Aparajita. Like, what set of four am I going to talk about? And so I just want you to know there are many different sets of four. So when I say that I'm going to talk about the four main goddesses of Tantra, I don't mean to step on anybody's toes because obviously different people will have a different idea as to what the four main goddesses are. So I'm just going to come clean, and this is the disclaimer. These are the four that I'm going to focus on in this lecture. I'm specifically going to focus on the three goddesses that are presented in the Malini Vijayo Taro Tantra, upon which Abhinavagupta bases his entire Tantra Loka and subsequent editions like Tantra Sara and others. So Abhinavagupta is very inspired by the Malini Vijayotara Tantra. It's like his main Tantra, and it's a Shakta Tantra, meaning it's about goddess worship. And it obviously has a more right hand sort of flavor as well as a left hand sort of flavor. So you can approach it from a more Kaula point of view. And that's exactly what we're going to do because that's exactly what Abhinavagupta did. So he's the great Tantric master who helped us understand the essence of the Tantras by compiling them and composing commentaries on them and presenting them in this complete work called the Tantra Loka, which is like his masterpiece. And he has another one called the Malini Vijaya Vartika, where he comments on this text, on just the first verse of this text. It's a huge text, and in it we encounter three goddesses: Parā, Parāparā, and Aparā. And more importantly, the text gives us a fourth goddess, which the text calls Matar Sadbhava. So Matar means, like we said earlier, Matrika, it means like mother, but there's wordplay here. Matar also means Pramatar, meaning knower. So this is the essence of all mothers, meaning this is the essence of all the goddesses, but more importantly, it's the essence of you. It's the essence of the subjective experiencing principle called consciousness. So this is goddess consciousness, if you will. And in the Krama, we refer to her as Samvit Devī, which I think is so on the nose. It's so telling. Samvit means consciousness. So Samvit Devī just means goddess consciousness. And so in the Pratyabhigya Hridaya Sutra, which is Kshema Raja's attempt to like summarize the whole tradition, by the way, as an aside, you should know that that text is also sometimes referred to as the Shakti Sutra. The sutras on Shakti, where there is a Shiva Sutra also. Now this is the Shakti Sutra, and it opens with this claim: Chitti Swatantra Vishwa Siddhi Hetuhu. Chitti is, in Sanskrit there are no proper nouns, so you can't say this is a name. So Shiva is not a name. Shiva is a word that means auspiciousness or blessing. And that word, auspiciousness or blessing, is used to denote that being called Shiva, who is my very own essence nature. What is that Shiva though? Essentially, that Shiva is consciousness, pure non-dual consciousness. But that consciousness being called Chitti is significant because Chitti is a feminine noun. So here we get the word consciousness in the feminine, meaning it's goddess consciousness. Or Samvit Devi or Chitti Swatantra means the free goddess, the all-pervasive, transcendent, immanent one called Chitti. So before any of this gets overly technical, I know the head spins a little bit when we talk Tantra because there's so many Sanskrit words and we're referring to all of these classical texts. And we're like, it's very easy to lose the plot, but it's also very important to remember that no matter how many Sanskrit words I throw at you, no matter how technical the discussion gets, no matter how esoteric and mind-boggling it becomes, we're actually talking about something so simple. In fact, the greatest secrets are always there right in front of us. And the most frustrating, arguably, secret about all of this is that ultimately we're just describing you. The biggest secret is the one to whom the secret is being told. You are that Devi called Samvit Devi or Kali Kala Sankarshini. So this is Matra Sadbhava. She is the essence of all the knowers, if you will. She is the primordial consciousness, Matra, the mother, as well as the Pramatar, the knower. So within her are the other three. But now what Abhinavagupta does is so brilliant, And it's exactly what Sri Ramakrishna does, like I was saying when we did the puja a few moments ago. So Sri Ramakrishna, as you know, we're in the Sri Ramakrishna lineage, and he was very famous and is very famous for referring to the one reality as being the same reality called by different names. Obviously, there is a precedent to this. This is something that's been known to the Vaidika tradition forever. Because you find in places like the Rig Veda statements like this: Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. There is only one reality, Ekam Sat. And different people or wise people, the Vipras, at different times call it by different names. Ekam Sat, Vipra, Bahuda, Vandanti. And of course, in the Vedas themselves, you see this demonstrated in the various Samhitas. Different names are used to refer to the ultimate principle of reality. So that's why the Yajur Veda is so important, because in the Sri Rudram, it's Rudra, it's Lord Shiva who is seen as the absolute. But in some other hymns, it's Narayana who is seen as the absolute, or Agni, or Soma, or Brihaspati, or something like that. So these are all different names that might refer to different deities. But lest you think there's any kind of polytheism here, immediately you'll see that each deity is exalted at different times to the status of the absolute, which is very interesting actually, because it argues that all the different religions in the world can be understood in the same way. That what one person calls Ola, another person might call Yahweh or the Father, another person might call that Kali, another person might call that Krishna or Shiva. So we're all using different names to refer to the same reality. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna intuited. So he would say something profound. He would be sitting in the temple at Dakshineshwar. And by the way, that temple is also really interesting because it's a Kali temple, but to Kali's right is Krishna, Radha Krishna. And in front of her are the 12 Jyotirlingas, the 12 Shiva temples. So Shiva, Shakti, Krishna, they're all here together. There's Ma. See, let me show you. Hold on. There's Ma Bhavatarini. Patra Devi, you don't have to jump out of the screen. That's also included in my claim. There is Ma. We're non-dualist here, you guys, don't worry. And in fact, you're more Ma to me than Amurti is Ma. That's what Swami Vivekananda taught us. That it's great to worship Ma in images. It's even better to worship Ma in the Taj Mahal of all temples, the human body, which is our Kaula claim also. That the best temple is here. The best sacraments are within. My own urine, my own feces, my own blood, my own semen, my own menses, my own laughter, my own tears. This is the worship. Anyway, not to get into any Kaula territory right now. We will, Ma willing, if she wills. But now let's just start with this, that in that Dakshineshwar temple, we had Ramakrishna, who is sitting there on the steps of the Kali temple, looking at the Radha Krishna temple, looking at the Shiva temples, and uniquely understanding that all these refer to the same. And he would look across the street to like a church, because in Ramakrishna's time, there were more religions available. There were Christian traditions, there were Muslim traditions, because of the Mughal invasion, because of the Christian colonies and whatnot, missions. So he would look across the street and say to Kali, "Oh mother, will you show me how the Christians worship you in their churches?" That's a profound statement. His Ishta is Kali. He's initiated into a Kali mantra, he's worshipping Kali. But he's saying, Ma Kali, can you show me how the Christians worship you? This is profound. He's not thinking of Kali as a Devi in like a goddess. I'm a Kali worshipper, you're a Christ worshipper. No, no, no. We're all worshiping the same thing using different names. He just happens to call it Kali. So by Kali, by Devi, he means that absolute, which other people are referring to in different names. That's a profound idea. And when someone asked him, I think it was Dr. Sharkar, somewhere towards the end of Sri Ramakrishna's life, Dr. Sharkar said, but isn't Kali some kind of Chandala Devi, meaning like, isn't she some kind of like tribal Devi or something? And the compiler of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, is quick to point this out. No, no, no. By Kali, what he means is Brahman. It's not a very nuanced answer actually, because he means a lot more than just what the Advaita Vedanta means by Brahman plus Shakti. But by Kali is not meant a particular goddess, it's meant the absolute. And this is the exact insight that Abhinava Gupta had too. So it's quite clear that Abhinava Gupta maybe was particularly fond of Kali, and arguably so too was Shankara, because there's hymns to Kali. Shankara writes Kalakashtakam. But of course, you can say Shankara is closer to Lalita Tripura Sundari. But in any case, Abhinava, what he does something brilliant. This Shaivacharya, this great teacher of Shaivism, this master, he looks to the Jayarata Yamala Tantra, he looks to the Devya Yamala Tantra, the Trishura Bhairava Tantra, the Tantra Sadbhava. He looks at all these different tantras, and there is the worship of Kali along Krama Kaula lines. And then he intuits that the Kali Kala Sankarshini of that text is none other than the Matra Sadbhava of this text, of the Malini Vijayotara Tantra. So he takes Kali and imports her, as it were, into the Malini Vijayotara Tantra, meaning he embeds within the Trika this Krama core. And so what you get is this Trika Krama synthesis. And so what Abhinavagupta is doing is what Swami Vivekananda is doing, is what Sri Ramakrishna is doing. They're synthesizing, they're harmonizing, pointing to the one and bringing together many different modalities in order to better appeal to the one. So what Swamiji does is he combines all the yogas, the four yogas. He combines Karma Yoga, the yoga of selfless action, with Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, with Jnana Yoga, the yoga of inquiry, with Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation. All of these were seen as separate paths to be practiced independently of one another prior to Swami Vivekananda. But what he's saying is that no, you can put all of them together. You can practice all the yogas at once. And that will bring you closer and more quickly towards the one, which can be represented by all four. Abhinavagupta arguably is doing the exact same thing. In fact, the Malini Vijayotara Tantra does the same thing because it points to three different formats of practice. Anavopaya first, then Shaktopaya, then Shambhavopaya. These are like three yogas, if you will, three ways to realize God. And all three can be practiced. All three can be practiced together. They can be practiced successively in a kind of krama. It doesn't matter. But you see what Abhinav has done is brilliant. He's pointed to the absolute reality as Kali and given it a Trika kind of presentation. So here are the four deities I want to talk about tonight. These are the four main deities of Tantra as per this interpretation. So they are Parā, Parāparā, and Aparā, and of course Kali, Kala, Sankarshini, the one in which these three exist. And then once we understand the one, we can understand the three. And once we understand the three, we can understand the 12. And once we understand the 12, we can understand the 15. So this is a journey from 1 to 3 to 12 to 15. I'm sorry if this is sounding like a math class. I know that's what you didn't sign up for. I know you didn't sign up for that. And Sri Ramakrishna notoriously hated math also. That he couldn't subtract. Right? Yeah, that's like some corny, like zany math teacher, like a young math teacher. He's like new to class and he's trying to impress you. The math of you. Numbers are trying to make you excited about numbers or something. Anyway. So let's talk about that. So these are the four main goddesses of Tantra as per this interpretation. So we'll start with Kali, Kali, Kala, Sankarshini. From there, I'm going to move on to the three, Parā, Aparā, and of course, in between them, Parāparā. And then from there, we'll move on to the 12. Kali in her 12 emanations, so Shrishti Kali, Rakta Kali, Mrityu Kali, Yama Kali, Sthitinasha Kali, Yama Kali, like that. And then after we do that, we can understand the 15 yoginis, which is what I wanted to do with you last week, but never got to it because we got kind of lost in the historical and magical presentation of how we Shaivas encountered Ma in the Smashan that we never really got. I mean, it was a 3-hour discussion about Kali, but we never got to like actually talking about the thing that I intended to talk about, which is kind of our style. And hopefully today we can cover that. So let's plunge right in. But before that, just a few announcements. So last week, so okay, here's the thing. There are so many more members of our community now, like the community is growing quite a bit, that it's becoming quite difficult to answer everybody's question. And of course, I really mean to. Like one of the main ways in which we can learn together is by asking questions and having more discussions with one another. And so, of course, after this lecture, when we finish this talk, we'll have a Q&A. So we'll just open the Zoom and, you can just like ask questions. And that's a good time. So if you have questions and you want to clarify some stuff, after the lectures is usually a good time to do so. But of course, it gets kind of late, especially those on the East Coast, or I think for Natalie Ma, she's in the UK right now, so it's probably like 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning or something like that. So if you're insomniacs, fine, good for you. You can stay up and you can ask questions, but obviously people have to wake up for sadhana in the morning and work and stuff like that. So of course, it might be difficult to stick around for the Q&A after the lectures. So we wanted to introduce more like one-on-one time, like office hours, and then those filled up really quickly. So we had 2 slots on Tuesday, 2 slots on Wednesday, 2 slots on Thursday, and 1 slot on Friday. But those 7 slots would just get booked out right away. So then, okay, what we did is we added another 4 slots. So there's 1 more on Tuesday, 1 more on Wednesday, 1 more on Thursday, and 1 more on Friday. So there are now 11 slots in total. So I told you about this last week, but last week the link was broken. So I'm very pleased to announce that it's fixed now. Okay, so if you click into the link, I'll just put it here in the chat. Here's how you can book the one-on-one meetings. So it's fixed. So all of those of you using the previous link, you've been telling me that it's not working. Yes, it's totally not working. Just forget any and all links prior to this one. But this link in this post, this is the one to book the one-on-one. Okay. So that's one thing. Like if for whatever reason you can't book those, of course the Q&A after the lectures is a good time. If you live in Los Angeles, of course you can come here. We host a Friday evening puja, so you can come by and then we can speak in real time. But also there's another thing I wanted to show you. So I get a lot of questions, and that's good. I'm really happy about that. But you know, a lot of these questions actually, if you just watch all the lectures in this series, it's called Kali, Goddess of the Tantras, or the lectures in this series, and or the Shaivism and Tantra series. And of course, we have the Dasha Mahavidya series too. Like these lectures, 55 plus 84 plus 19. I'm not going to do any math right now because already I think I'm mathed out. But all of these lectures, they're all like just free and available for everyone. So just go and click into these. So if you go to the Patreon and click into collections, you'll find these, right? So collections, and then Kali, Goddess of Tantra, Shaivism and Tantra, the Shama Vidyas. Like these three playlists, I think, if you just watch all the videos in here, they'll probably answer those questions. You know, a lot of those questions are answered in one way, shape, or form here. But then also, I get a lot of questions about Guru Yoga. You know that in our tradition, in the Tantric tradition, there's a lot of emphasis placed on Diksha, on spiritual initiation. And of course, there's a lot of misconception and superstition about what that looks like. And there's also a lot of safety concerns. Because when it comes to the guru, we're always at risk of like cults of personality or like, you know, charismatic individuals who are out to steal all of our money. And like, you know, it's a very like dangerous sphere of spiritual practice. But you cannot deny that Tantra is essentially guru based. And it gets more so when it comes to the Shakta traditions. So the frequently asked questions about the guru and the place of the guru within the context of Tantra, you'll find stuff for that here. So in the Tantric Guru, here you'll find about 19 lectures. It's a growing playlist. And of course, on like sadhana for general spiritual life, this is a good playlist. How to practice spirituality. 27 lectures on just like the basics of sadhana. Of course, these are more specialized. So the meditation manual par excellence for non-dual tantra is the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, and that's an ongoing series. We're doing that, and then of course the ritualism like daily puja like that you'll find here, and there's hatha yoga. Anyway, I wanted to show you this, the Q&A. So there are like 38 videos now in the Q&A. It's a growing playlist, but you'll find that in the Q&A there are people who are probably asking the questions that you have. So these are good resources, these various playlists, but this one might be even better. If you click into the Q&A, you'll find lots of Q&A videos, and they can be a bit repetitive sometimes because people tend to ask the same questions, but I find that the answers are almost never the same, depending on the person who's asking and the context in which it's being asked, and arguably also the mood that we're in that day. So I really enjoy the Q&A playlist and all the various lectures there, and I just wanted to remind you that it's there. So if you have questions and for whatever reason you're not able to book one-on-one time, or you're not able to stick around after the lecture, or you're not able to just come over and like have a conversation here, or for whatever reason if there's no other place to ask questions, those might be some good places to look. Yeah. Okay, cool. So thank you all so much, and thank you so much for your patience with all my slow correspondences. I'm working on it. I'm gonna make sure that I reply to everybody as far as possible as I can. And of course, some questions take a little bit more time, and some people are more in a state of spiritual emergency than others, you know, and so therefore like certain people will be prioritized, etc. But like my claim is that if I'm not able to get to any of to these questions, like don't forget that if like I was saying last week, if you go to the Discord, oh, here's Colleen. Oh, so if you go to the Discord and you click into questions and answers here, like if you ask in the questions and answers, probably someone will answer you. And there are a lot of people who are like really proficient here. And for all things Sanskrit related, if you click into Sanskrit class, Bhairavanandaji has got a bunch of really, really important resources for us. And this is all part of our project to empower people to approach the material directly for yourself, so you don't have to depend on like internet interlocutors. You can like see what the texts are saying themselves. And of course, I'll always praise the check-in because it's my favorite thing about the Discord. I don't use it enough, but the check-in is like a place where everyone checks in on their spiritual practices, and it's awesome. So yeah, that's there for you. That resource is there. And if anybody's in Colorado or is down to travel, we're doing our retreat in about 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So on the 27th to the 31st this month, we're all just gonna meet in Kuleshwari's house in Colorado. Of course, it's open to the public. It's totally free. You can just come and crash. Everyone's just gonna sleep on Kuleshwari's floor or wherever. And Ruby Ma has also opened her home for anybody who wants to stay. So if you're interested, please feel free, be our guest. That's gonna be August 27th to 31st. Okay, so that's all the announcements. Okay, so let's get back into the cool stuff. Now we'll talk about. First, we'll start with Kali. What is Kali? And this was the question that we took up last week. And we specifically asked, what is Kali in the context of Shaiva Tantra? So how does the tradition understand Kali? And by that, I mean, what do the books say? Because like I said in the beginning of this discussion, the books, the tantras, the agamas, that's what matters most, arguably. Because it's in the agamas that we get all the mantras. It's in the agamas that we get the jnana, the philosophy, and the kriyas, the practices, and the rituals, and all of that. But it's not just the agamas. Obviously, the agamas are very difficult to read on their own. It's not just that they're in Sanskrit most of the time, but they're in very elliptical, difficult to understand Sanskrit. All of that is called Sandhya Bhasha, the twilight language. Sometimes it's very hard to understand exactly what the text is saying. So when we take the text up, we take it along with two other things, like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Like if you're going to take your medicine, you want to like take it with some sugar, I guess. So what makes it very sweet to study Tantra is we often study it with two more things. One is called Sattarka, reasoning. So when we study a Tantra, we need to be able to understand what that Tantra is saying. So often we study it along with a commentary, like some kind of exegetical material called a vritti or a vartika. But also we study it along with the Guru, Satguru. So these three things, Sad Agama, the text, Sat Tarka, our own reasoning ability, purified and clarified through scriptural study, and Sadguru, having a spiritual community or a spiritual guide to decipher that text for us and to engage in a kind of living tradition of exegesis or eisegesis or something. So we had to ask, what do the texts themselves say about Kali? And we learned that there are many different tantras. There are 10 Shaiva agamas, which are dualistic. There are 18 Raudra agamas, which are like not quite dualistic, not quite non-dualistic, a bit of both. And then you have the 64 Bhairava agamas. Now, these are properly speaking non-dual, and they tend to emphasize the goddess. So based on what is said in these tantras, Malini Vijayotara Tantra, of course, being one of the main ones, Malini means the goddess garlanded in letters. Vijaya means victory, and Uttara means supreme. So Malini Vijaya Uttara. So Malini Vijayotara Tantra means the book of the supremely victorious goddess garlanded in letters, or the triumphant garlanded goddess. What a beautiful just turn of phrase. Anyway, in that book, we encounter the goddess in a non-dual kind of way. Not necessarily, you know what? I should back up. Let me just say this. One thing that's so cool about the Malini Vijayotaro Tantra is that you can read it dualistically. You can read it qualified non-dualistically. You can read it in a non-dualistic way, because the fact that there is a trika, a trinity, implies that all three interpretations are possible. You can read it along Aparā lines, Parāparā lines, or Parā lines, and all will give you a true depiction of reality. And there is one in which duality, qualified non-duality, and Advaita proper all in here. And this is called Param Advaya, the supreme non-dual principle, which is not at all antithetical to duality. So dualism is included, is involved actually in this study. And that's like a mother's heart. It's like such a motherly thing to do, to just try to make space for everyone. And you could say like the fatherly way of doing things is say this is right and that is wrong. So a more patriarchal approach might be more right and wrong, rules and regulations oriented. This is more like anything goes, everyone gets fed, you can just find what you want in the text. So it's not true that the Malini Vijayotaro is Advaita. The Malini Vijayotaro Tantra is perhaps Param Advaya. It's non-dual in the sense that it includes all the readings. Anyway, having said that, based on what these non-dual tantras say about Kali, there are some authors like Abhinavagupta, like Shrittikanta, like Maheshwarananda, who have composed exegetical or eisegetical texts on those tantras. These are called post-scriptural commentators or post-scriptural writers. So coming to Abhinavagupta, he defines Kali in this following way. So this is a very important formula. It's one of his definitions for Kali. So he says, Kshepo Jnanam cha Sankyam Gati Nada iti Kramat. She is Krama, she is sequence. But by sequence, he means also simultaneity, akrama. So she is the sequence of unfolding, she is the sequence of infolding, so evolution and involution. Shrishti and Sanghara, or Shrishti and Laya, but she's also simultaneously doing all of that. So she's simultaneity and sequence. But what kind of sequence? A sequence of dynamism. Gati, she moves. And what kind of movement? A resonance, nada. So the word that was with God, the word that is God, nada, that cosmic, vibration, that spanda, which can become bindu, which is the configured universe. So that nada is the dynamism of Kali. But not just that, she's also the one that projects the universe out. Kshepo. She spits it out or vomits it out or like ejaculates it out in some context called Visarga. She's Visarga Shakti. That's the word Visarga can mean ejaculation in both the sense of speech, a word act, or a sexual act. Both are included in that word Visarga. So it's like So she sighs contentedly, and as she sighs, the universe is projected into existence. So she's that power by which the universe is thrown out, but she's also that power in which the universe is articulated, or rather cognized, jnanam. So any kind of cognition is also Kali. The power to cognize is Kali. But to cognize, you need one more thing called Sankhya. Sankhya means to count. So Sankhya, the tradition of counting, it's about matrifying or delimiting or discerning. So Kshepo Jnanam Sankyam. Oh, sorry, Kshepo Jnanam Cha Sankyam. She is that which counts or delimits or matrifies. She is that who projects the world and in whom the universe is cognized. That's the first thing we learn about Kali. The first definition of Kali. Kshepo Jnanam Cha Sankyam Gatinada iti kramat. Then comes something stunning. Kalanam. Kurvati Kali Karshini iti abhidhiyate. Kalanam, like in the word kalpana, means to imagine or to visualize. So Kali is that goddess who visualizes the universe. So the whole universe is within her, cognized within her, as you would imagine a play or something. As you would in your mind, like think about something that maybe doesn't even exist. So now we're somewhere in between the world as an externally projected reality and the world as void. Somewhere in between the world and dissolution is this dream, this projection, this kalpana, this visualization. So hopefully you can see the first part of the formula leans towards Parā, leans towards the immanence aspect. And the second part of the formula leans towards Kali or Kala Sankarshini, the transcendence aspect. And this word Kalanam kind of sits in the middle of those two. Then comes the Kali stuff. Kurvati, she moves, but what kind of movement? To devour. Kali Karshini iti abhidhiyate. So she is Karshini, she's the one who devours. So the one who projects the world, the one who holds the world, is ultimately also the one who devours the world. So now we can just stay with this definition of Kali for a few moments. Last week we also saw Shittikanta in the Mahanaya Prakasha. He said, Evam Adho. Oh, actually, let me pull that up for you. The Abhinavagupta one we usually easily can have memorized, but this one is a bit longer, so let's pull it up. Okay, here we go. Evam adho eva shaktihi spandana shila bahir vishayonmukhi. So this is a profound statement. Spandana shila. She is the ground of vibration. And bahir means outside. Vishayonmukhi means facing outwards. So evam adho eva shaktihi spandana shila bahir vishayonmukhi vyapini bhavena Shushti Upadesha Bhajanam. So she is the primordial pulsation, inclined towards externality, the all-pervasive bhajana, receptacle of a mission and wisdom. Shrishti and Upadesha. Upadesha means like wisdom or teaching. So within her womb are all teachings. Within her womb is always spontaneously generated all forms. So verily is she the primordial pulsation inclined towards externality, the all-pervasive receptacle of a mission and wisdom. She alone is the pure awareness. So Eka Aiva, meaning she is one. Ekaiva Chit, like chin. Chin Nila. So she alone is the pure awareness in which shines Abhasa, experiences like the color blue. Nila Dhava Bhasa Rupa. Stira means still. Astira means unsteady or forceful. Hatta means forceful. Astira means moving. Gavati means to move, right? So astira, unsteady. Hatta, forceful. Gavati, movement. So she is the dynamic and forcefully flowing one who flows into externality. She is verily Kula, meaning she is the body or the embodied universe. And paschat, yet afterwards, paschat means later, she withdraws it back, pratisanghata swabhava, into herself. She withdraws the universe back into herself, and her spontaneous nature, her swabhava, is found, agra gra gami prasarat, sahaja rupa lakshyate. It's found at the very edge of any arising experience. And of course, there's one addendum. Soyam nirupadho chitspayad upadikrito bedaha. And if there is anything called duality, it's only there, it only shines within her as a result of these upadis, these limiting adjuncts. We don't need to get into that right now. But the main thing I want to point to is that her sahaja swabhava, her spontaneous nature, is found at the edge of any arising experience. So now we'll enter into a profound meditation on the 12 Kalis. to work with this idea of the Krama. So here, Abhinavagupta has already played his cards. For those who know, he's already mentioned the Krama, the sequence. Of course, Shrutikanta, he's a master of the Mahartha tradition. So in the Mahanaya Prakasha, this is a Krama text. So he's also going to discuss the sequence, the Krama of Kalis. So what is the Krama? And just for fun, I'll just chant the first 5 verses of the Krama Stotram, and maybe we can even chant it together. Just the first 5 verses with a very, very loose translation. So I'll just put it up on the screen for you, and then let's just chant it a little bit. There are many different Krama Stotrams. Even Abhinava has his own Krama Stotram, but this is Eraka's one. Oh, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay. Kaularnavanandaganurmirupam unmeshamesho bhayabhajamanta niliyate nilakulalayeya tam shrishti-kalim satatam namami. Let me just get this. Sorry, I prefer C-sharp. Om Kaularnavanandaganurmirupam unmeshamesho bhayabhajamanda niliyate nilakulalayeya tam shrishti-kalim satatam namami mahavinodarpita matrachakra virendra kasrigrasapana saktam rakti kritam cha pralayatyate tam namami vishwakriti rakta kalim vajidaya svikrita vata chakra prakanta sangatta gamagamastam shuchirayastam gamitorchishatam shantam namami stiti nashakalim sarvata sankarshana samyamasya yamasya yantur jagato yamaya vapur mahagrasa vilasa ragat sankarshayantim pranamami kalim Unmanyananta nikilarta garbha ya bhava sanhara nimeshameti sad udita sadyud Dayaya shunyam sanghara kali muritam namami sanghara kali muritam namami. I always praise Satatam Namami. I always praise that Kali of emission who blooms and recedes like a wave of bliss in the ocean of the Kaula. I always praise that passionate Kali, Rakta Kali, who manifests this world and who savors the world during a pause in dissolution. She who happily drinks the nectarian blood offered to the circle of mothers, of matrikas, by these viras, these heroes. I salute that peaceful one, the Kali who destroys stasis, who is there in the coming and the going of the breath, and in the perfect union of breath, which is set in motion by the wheel of wind, in other words, the prana chakra, the life force, who dissolves all notions of purity. I prostrate before that Kali, who out of desire for the play of great devouring and controlling the world dissolves Yama, the controller, who controls the destruction of things. I salute that destroying Kali, Sanghara Kali, who is the endless, ever-radiant and joyful, transcendent void, the womb of all things, who closes her eyes in order to withdraw the world so as to give rise to the void of consciousness. Wow, so of course there are 7 more verses, but you can see a profound meditation is being offered here. Anyway, before I plunge into the meditation, let me just check in with everybody. Is everybody okay? Hanging in there? Last week, I just have to apologize. We got carried away and the lecture was like 3 hours long. We were telling a story. And today I'm just going to be more mindful of your time and just try to check in and see, do you want to just do a little more? It's been about an hour, I think. So we'll go in. We have all the time in the world. But we'll just do a little more. I just want to explore this meditation with you of these 12 Kalis. And then after that, let's see how the 12 map onto the 4. Right? Like how you can get 12 from 4, and then we'll backtrack from 4 to 1. So having already discussed the 1, let's skip now to the 12. So Kali is consciousness. That's just the first thing to understand. She's Samvit Devī. But there's something about consciousness that we have to understand. Good. And this is the most important thing that you have to understand about consciousness in the Tantric tradition. This is what distinguishes the Tantric transmission of Advaita from the classical Advaita of Sri Shankara. And not really, because as you know, Sri Shankara is a worshipper of Mother through and through. Otherwise, why would he compose a Saundarya Lahari? Many people say he didn't, but you know. Now, the difference though between Shankara's Kevala Advaita, which talks about Brahman, and Jaya Krishnan ji and I were just discussing this the other day also, and Chris ji and I were also just discussing this. Like, what's the difference actually between Advaita Vedanta and between Tantric non-duality? And the key difference is this: dynamism. In Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is Nishkriya. He's Shanta Brahma, without any kind of action, without any movement, without any dynamism. So there the world is conceived of as a dream. It's Maya. It doesn't ultimately exist, and Maya herself doesn't ultimately exist. She is Sad Asad Anirvacha. You can't say whether she is or she isn't. Ultimately, absolutely, she ends up being not. She doesn't exist. She is illusion. Whereas here, the Kaula Marga takes a more, I guess you could say, realist model in which the world is real as a manifestation of non-dual consciousness. And so that non-dual consciousness called Samvit Devī manifests the world, but in a krama. Iti kramat. And that krama follows a sequence of 12. Now, why 12? You could argue there are 5 organs of perception. That is to say, there are the nose, there is the nose for smelling, the tongue for tasting, the eyes for seeing, the skin for feeling, and the ears for hearing. Notice, as I was saying last week, without these 5 organs of perception, no experience of the external sensual world would be possible at all. In other words, if I did not have eyes to see, there might be no physical things for me to see. You know, if I had no ears to hear, no nose to smell, no tongue to taste, no skin to touch, and no eyes to see, there would be no physical world. So this is a different way of looking at things. Usually we think there is such a thing as an independent, objectively existing entity called the world, and then we come along and with our 5 senses, we interact with the world. Now flip that narrative. If I was born without any of my 5 senses whatsoever, I would never contact the world, and nor could anybody ever alert me to its existence. To propose the world without any eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or skin would be to propose an entity that is unverifiable. And that is a manifestly unscientific thing to say. So we're flipping the script. We're not saying that we are here perceiving the world with our senses. We're saying that we are projecting the world into existence through our senses. Another way of saying this is that the world depends on the senses. It rests upon the senses. So these 5 organs of perception are prior, if you will, to the experience of the world. And not only that, the 5 organs of action too are the means by which I interact with the world. So my legs, my hands, so locomotion, grasping, the organ of evacuation, the genitals, the organs of reproduction, of course, also speaking. Yeah, so the world, and this is why it's relative, because the world is relative to my 5 senses. In fact, in the Chandi, in the beginning of the Devi Mahatmya, there's a profound teaching about the relativism of the world, because we each are equipped with different sense organs. Imagine how different the world would look if you had an extra sense organ. You know, like think about what a shrimp might see of the world, like the prawn or the shrimp. What kind of world must it interact with? Think about a dog's world. You know, perhaps it's all black and white, and in that dog's world, they're experiencing smells, and maybe those smells appear as colors for them. Who knows? Think of what the dog can hear and what the dog can smell that we cannot hear nor smell. And think about what a butterfly's world might be, or what a bhuta or preta's world might be like. And you know, that's why people try to invoke pretas, ghosts, in the cremation ground, because you can ask them for like winning lottery ticket numbers or something like that. You know, my grandmother on my mom's side, it's very funny. She's always asking me for lottery ticket numbers, just like trying her luck, you know. She's like, "You're doing so much sadhana, worshipping Ma Kali. Here, quick, give me a number." So she can go buy a lottery ticket. And I always say the same thing to her. I always say, ek, one. Undra, I always say. One. The only number I want to give you is 1. But anyway, this idea of bhutas and pretas and vetalas, like sometimes it's desirable to contact them because they experience time differently, like the Tralfamadorians or something in Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5, or like in that movie Arrival. There might just be beings who have different language structures, who experience time in a different way, and so if you ask them about the future, for them that future is still the present. You know, so think about how relative the world is to our senses. If there are different senses, the world would appear to be different. And also, if I had different organs of action, the world might also appear to be different. Like I might interact with it in a different way. So I receive the world and act upon it through these 5 organs of perception and through these 5 organs of action. So the world is relative to it. But not only that,
it itself, these set of 10 organs are relative to the mind in which they are appearing. So if I had perfect 20/20 vision, but I was mindless, would I see? Like if I had all my 5 organs of perception, but I had no mind whatsoever, if you were to perform some kind of lobotomy, except you were to take out the whole brain, actually you might open the head and find that there's nothing there. You might be very disappointed. But let's say, you pull the brain out of a person and then you ask them to like perceive through their eyes. There would be no connections. But not only that, say the hardware is there, but the lights are on, but no one is home. The mind is not there. The hardware is there. The eyes are receiving electrical signals and those are going to the brain through the optical nerve. But if there's no mind, if there's no first person experiencing psychicality or something, yeah, exactly. What would happen? Nothing. You wouldn't experience anything. So the 5 organs of perception, the 5 organs of action are relative to the mind. And so you could add the mind. And then you know what? Would there really be any perception if there wasn't the intellect? I need the buddhi, I need some kind of discerning faculty to make sense of what appears in the mind. So all the images, like how the eye sees things and flips them, and then the mind like then flips them back, and then it's the intellect that says, oh, this is a table, or like if none of your Zoom screens had names. Let's say I'm just meeting Ritama, and then I'm just meeting it's probably Rita, but Rita in Sanskrit means like dharma. So, say I'm looking at Rita or Ritama, I'm saying I'm looking at Rose, and let's say like Pushpa Devi or Ritama, like you didn't have your names on the screen. Now that I know you, having seen you and having seen your names, the next time I see this image, I will somewhere in my intellect be able to say, oh, that's Rita actually, that's Ritama, that's Pushpa actually. Why? Because the intellect is able to like sift through memories and discern what this image is. Do you know that really beautiful story? The Shakuntala Abhigyana. It's a gorgeous story. It's like once a king goes on a hunting trip, right? Isn't it a beautiful story? And so the king is out in the forest hunting, and then he comes across this beautiful yogini or apsara type woman, Shakuntala. And she's like a forest dwelling woman, like a tribal, but she's exceedingly beautiful and charming, and the king falls in love immediately. And then the king, you know, comes up to her and says, I want to marry you. Upon my life, upon my honor, you will be my queen. I know it's not appropriate. I am a king, so I can only marry a Kshatriya woman, a Rani, a princess somewhere. And you are but a Chandala. No one will agree to this, but I am in love. And because I'm the king, they don't have to agree to this. I can do whatever I want, and what I want is you, and I want to marry you. So please come with me. And she like doesn't believe him. She's like, oh my God, there's no way this is gonna happen. And he's like, no, 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 take my ring. This is my token of my promise ring. So he gives her a ring, they make love, and then he leaves and he says, okay, I'll come back for you. I'll go back to the kingdom and get everything ready, and then I'll come back and bring you back to the kingdom and make you my queen. So they've decided to get married, and she's over the moon with joy. Both of them are young lovers, so full of delight. And so he goes. Now, Durvasas happens to be passing by that way. And if you know anything about Durvasas, okay, first of all, he's the one to whom Lord Shiva revealed all the tantras, mythically speaking. So Abhinava Gupta ji also talks about this. Like, it's to Durvasas that Lord Shiva, in the form of Sri Kanta, in this Kali Yuga, revealed all the tantras. And then Durvasas revealed it to 3 mind-born sons, Trayambaka, Amardaka, and Srinatha. So anyway, there's like a link between Shaivism and Durvasas. But he's irascible. He's a really irritable guy. You like don't want to get on his bad side because he's known for cursing. And by the way, if somebody does a lot of tapasya, you don't want to fuck with them. Because if you get on their bad side, whatever they say will come true. They have so much mantra shakti. And arguably they're so good with the gods that if you like cross them, there's nothing worse than harming devotees, arguably. So you should always be gentle and kind to everyone, but especially to devotees. And I think especially to Kali Bhaktas. Don't fuck with them because they're worshipping some very fierce spirits. You don't want to get on their bad side. Anyway, um, Durvasas is not to be fucked with, but here's what happens. Shakuntala is caught in the days of young love. Like she's full of excitement and joy, and she's become a little distracted and abstracted. And so Durvasas comes up to her house and asks for some water, as it is indeed the custom for sadhus to ask for water. So he calls out to her, Om Namo Narayana, or something, asks for water, but she doesn't hear him. She's busy daydreaming about the handsome young king who she's soon going to be married. And Durvasas, of course, can like read minds and everything like that. And he gets so upset that he's being spurned, that he's being ignored at the door, that she's not following the customs. So he curses her. He says, I curse you such that the king will forget all about you. Oh my God, what a terrible curse. She doesn't forget about the king, but the king forgets all about her. And all her hopes and dreams are dashed the moment Durvasa says that. But then, the thing about these sadhus, these sages, is they can be quick to anger, but also very quick to forgive. They're like children in that way. They throw temper tantrums, but then often they come to their senses and they're like, oh my God. So after Durvasa pronounces the curse, he's like, oh fuck, that was too much. That was disproportionate. And he was feeling kind of shy about that. This happened with Swamiji too, because Swami Vivekananda was not a Brahmana and he became a sannyasin. And usually, if you're not a Brahmana, you can't become a sannyasin. So all these like traditional sannyasins would make fun of him. They'd say, you're not a sannyasin, you're just a Kolkata babu. And one person said, oh, you're a Chandala, you're no better than a Chandala or a Shudra or something. And his response was, oh yeah, I'm a Chandala? Well, then you're the Chandala of Chandalas. You're the Shudra of Shudras. And then one of his disciples, who was with him at the time, asked him, Swami, was that right to do? And Swami Vivekananda said, no, my boy, that was not okay. I lost my temper. I shouldn't have said that. So anyway, sometimes this happens. We lose our temper and then we're like, I wish I hadn't said that. But anyway, the deed is done. Durvasa has proclaimed it. He can't take it back. The king by now has already forgotten all about Shakuntala. But in order to remedy the situation, Durvasa says, okay, here's what we'll do. This ring that the king gave you, I'm going to empower it. It's now a magical object. And so when you present it to the king, the moment the king sees this ring, he will immediately recognize you. And then the curse will be lifted and you'll get married. So take this ring to the king, show it to him, and it will jog his memory. So Shakuntala is very excited about this. So she's making her way to the kingdom, to the palace, with the ring. But while she's crossing a river, she drops the ring into the water and it's swallowed by a fish. So what a tragedy. Anyway, then she decides to make the journey anyway, and she gets to the palace, and of course the king is like, who is this scruffy tribal woman? I have no idea. Get her out of here. And of course she's heartbroken. It's such a tragedy. The fish ate the ring. What are you going to do? Anyway, there's a long story here, but eventually somebody finds the fish and gets the ring. And this motif is repeated even in the Matsyendranath, Gorakshanath kind of stories. Anyway, so they get the ring from the fish, and then the ring is presented to the king, and the king recognizes Shakuntala. So it's a very important Kalidasa play on this. It's called Abhigyana Shakuntala, meaning the token by which Shakuntala is recognized. What a beautiful thought. And the whole thing is a metaphor, arguably, because these tantras, these agamas, these tantras, they are the abhigyana, the token, the ring, the one ring to rule them all, by which you will recognize Shakuntala. And who is Shakuntala? Your very own essence nature. But you're seeing it all the time. Right now you're looking at it all the time. I'm looking at God. Only in my stubbornness, I choose to call it the world. I choose to call it this person with these qualities, that person with those qualities. I choose to divide up the world with my own reasoning into this and that. But in truth, it's all one reality, shining non-differently in non-discursive, pure non-dual awareness. But how will I recognize that? I don't need to attain anything. I just have to recognize what I'm seeing. So if I'm looking at Rita, I might not know that it's Rita until I know that it's Rita. And then once I know that it's Rita, and now what is the Abhigyana? The Abhigyana is the name that the Zoom provides me. But if I forget, then if I see that, I might not know who I'm looking at. I might be seeing her the whole time or them the whole time, but I don't know that's what I'm looking at until someone says, do you know that Rita? That's that one, actually. And then I'm like, oh, but it's not new knowledge. It's the same perception, but now properly understood. And arguably, it's the buddhi that does that. So the buddhi is very important, because it's there that liberation and bondage occur. So buddhi, manas, and the 5 organs of perception, the 5 organs of action. Notice how these are 12 in number. So 5 plus 5 plus manas plus buddhi 1 and 2 gives you 12. So the world as you see it is a function of these 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action, and the mind and intellect. And the kind of world you perceive is also determined by these 12 things. So you can think of them as like rays, rashmis, marichis, rays of light that emanate outward. And their controller, the centerpiece of all of this, is called Martanda Bhairava is one name for him, which means the Bhairava of the setting sun, or the Paramarka Bhairava, the Bhairava as the sun. But this is important. That sun means my ego, or the one that I take myself to be. So the personality here is not condemned. Many spiritual traditions condemn the ego. Here, it's exalted. It's a god. It's Bhairava. It's a deity in and of himself. And that ego has these 12 rays, these 12 Bhairavis or 12 Kalis that project outward. So having understood that, the 12 Kalis represent a series of events that either culminate in the experience or culminate in the absorption of the experience. I'm going to take you now to a list of these 12 Kalis. We encountered them in different lectures, but let's just go over them. So we start with Shrishti Kali. So she is that Kali who manifests an object internally. And this is a profound idea that no object is ever manifested externally to consciousness. Because everything that you have ever encountered in your life, you've only ever experienced it within your own subjectivity, indeed, inside of your own interiority. It's a profound idea that we're not experiencing an external objective reality. The world is not out there, it's in here. I am not in the world. The world is an experience in me. If we can just understand this, how profound. Because we know that we want to change the world, but if we just change the one in whom the world appears, the world will change. This is the esoterica behind that Gandhiji statement, be the change you want to see in the world. Often we think this means fix your own damn self first and then go and fix other people. Usually we do it the other way around. We fix everyone else because we think that's going to fix us. But you might think, oh, Gandhiji is saying, no, 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 sort your own bullshit out first. Like fix yourself and then fix the world. As if it's a sequence. It's not. It's simultaneous. The moment this is sorted, this is also sorted. There's no world apart from this. In fact, it appears within this. So Shrishti Kali, she manifests an object internally. So take the tea. And by the way, Pushpa Devi, thank you. This is a bomb black tea. It's like indicative of your being. It's rose black. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for the vampire's blood also. A very themed offering for Ma Kali at last time's puja. Okay, now I'm sipping. There appears now the taste of this tea. This is Shrishti Kali. Shrishti means a mission. So she has manifested an object internally. Now, this Vyapi Bahirmukhi, this outward facing one, is Rakta Kali. She becomes passionate towards that object. She becomes externalized, as it were. She forgets that this object is internal to consciousness and she focuses instead on just the object. So we lose ourselves in the taste of the tea. We forget all about ourselves and we only become aware of the tea. This is an emphasis on idam twa, thisness or thatness. Then comes Sthiti Nasha Kali. So she is that Kali who wishes to reabsorb that experience. So she begins to like close her eyes and take that experience. And after you savor something, you want to close your eyes and be one with it. But then comes Yama Kali. This is very hard to understand or describe. But this is the Kali who manifests and subsequently dissolves a vignya or an obstacle to reabsorption. So we all have our hang-ups, and this is where it gets interesting because the Kaula Marga argues that we have to get over our shame and our guilt because we'll never be able to access pure non-dual consciousness if we're stuck with all of our rules. So let's say I taste something and it's delicious. I won't really be able to enjoy it if on some level I don't feel worthy of that bliss, or if on some level I think it's wrong or somehow sinful to enjoy what I want to enjoy. So in the Kaula Marga, it's like, here, drink some wine. Oh, you're a Brahmana, you're forbidden to drink wine. Tough luck, because that's the practice. The practice is to immerse your mind in beauty, but to relinquish all your hang-ups and projections around that beauty. So Yamakali, in a sense, is that sense in which I am unworthy of bliss, or in which this would be wrong, or there'll be some repercussion, or something like this, some kind of hesitance comes when I want to really be one with something. And it could also be fascination with something else. So before I can truly savor my tea, I become interested in a scone or something, or what is loosely in America called biscuits. I did a retreat in Atlanta recently at the Vedanta Society, and they were very serious about this. Scones are not biscuits. I was trying to understand everything in the context of like, okay, what you call cookies, I call biscuits. So what you call biscuits, maybe we call scones, I guess. But then I tried a biscuit and it was nothing like a scone, and it was a religious experience. They were fresh out the oven. Jyotima, who we were staying with, prepared these biscuits with vegetarian gravy, and I was like, we like put the butter in it. It was just like, anyway, so there might be like a feeling of, oh, I can't stay with the tea because I'm running for the biscuits, or I can't stay with the biscuits because I'm running for the gravy or something. There's some reason why I'm not able to take the experience in. So this is what life is like for most of us. We're not really able to internalize ourselves because we're caught in the spell of the external or the seemingly external. In fact, it's not even external, it's internal, but it feels external, and I'm never able to go past that externality. That externality becomes all I know. And so many of us are living this kind of life, a very sort of superficial life, because we're always floating on the surface. We're always only ever sampling the externals and never diving deep into that internal. So we're caught in the Aparā level, you could say. Aparā, arguably you could argue, is samsara, this world of seeming externality in which one object is quickly replaced with another, in which no real satisfaction is attained. So the mantra, of course, the Mahavakya of this level of reality is, I can't get no satisfaction. The great Rishi, Mick Jagger, presented that mantra. Mick Jagger Ishaye Namaha. Anyway, so this idea of I just can't internalize it, I can't discover that which is beautiful in the beauty, is because of Yamakali, you could say. There's some kind of hang up. But if I'm able to overcome that hang up, then there's this act of reabsorbing the object. So coming back to the Stotram, you can see Shrishti Kali, she is the Kali of a mission who blooms and recedes like a wave of bliss in the ocean of the Kaula. And Passionate Kali, she manifests the world and she savors the world during a pause in dissolution. She who happily drinks the nectarian blood or wine offered to the circle of mothers by the heroes. So you can see the circle of mothers represents language and the blood represents prana. We'll get into that in just a few moments. Or wine represents the world, and the Tantric adepts referred to here are the Viras, the practitioners of the Vama Marga. So they are passionate. They're engaging with the sense objects of the world. And then, importantly, they don't get stuck there, though. That's when Vama Marga can be misunderstood and misapplied and just turn into basic gross indulgence, which is fine too. Everybody needs to finish with that. But for it to become a Marga, for it to become an actual spiritual practice, there has to be this Sthiti Kali and Yamakali, and more importantly, the ability to go beyond Yamakali into Sanghara Kali. So here, we are able to internalize. We reabsorb the object. Now, in Mrityu Kali, we experience the samskara of that object. So say it's the taste of tea. When I drink the tea, and then one is able to stay with the taste of tea and then go inward, at which point you might be tempted to close the eyes. It takes a long time actually for the flavor of the tea to completely dissolve. And you just stay with that. And when it completely dissolves, it leaves behind some memory, some impression, like a residual taste, which is arguably wholly psychical in nature. It's no longer a physical taste. So I can still taste the physical sensation of the tea. But long after it dissolves, there will remain in my experience the samskara. Now that samskara is dissolved by Mrityu Kali and Rudra Kali respectively. And if I can stay with that samskara and watch it dissolve, meaning if I can be ekagra, single point, gra means point. So if I can have a single point in mind, ekagra, on that perceived object as a samskara, then that will lead me to Maratanda Kali. So then I become aware of the ego. The ego is ahankara, the one who is created in response to something perceived. So this is the Buddhist idea of like mutually codependent arising. What they're talking about with that vijnana is none other than this Maratanda Kali, the one who arises in response to some object. So the taste of tea creates the taster of the tea. That's Maratanda Kali actually. And if I can focus on that self, it will reabsorb the solar mandala of the 12 faculties. So the Dwadasha Rashmis or the Dwadasha Marichis, that gets reabsorbed in the circle of the ego. Now language kind of breaks down, because now we're talking about that reality, who is the taster of the tea. Not even the tongue, which is tasting, and not even the tea, which is tasted. It's that Maratanda Kali. But it's the egoity, the sense of being here as the taster of the tea. This is what Ramana Maharshi arguably kept pointing to when he was asking you, Nanyar, who am I, who am I? He's pointing to this actually, not to Brahman. He's pointing to Ahankara. But it's a very subtle thing. Be aware of the Ahankara, become aware of the ego, which you will become aware of as a result of following any experience into its final point of dissolution. And then what? Then you realize the ego is an object. You step back from the ego and you're like, oh, it's a really subtle object actually. Taste it. And if you can just be with the ego, if you can taste the rasa of egoity, it too gets reabsorbed. And by the way, this reabsorption all happens automatically. The Kalis just reabsorb the moment. You libate them with your attention, you could say. So Paramarka Kali comes and she reabsorbs the circle of the Lord of the circle, the Martanda Bhairava. So he too gets absorbed. And then comes this terrifying Kali, Kala Agni Rudra Kali. So she will reabsorb the separation of even that one Purusha from another Purusha. So by the way, in Paramarka Kali, the ego is absorbed, right? So if you've been studying your Sankhya, you know that the next reality that comes after the ego is none other than Purusha. It precedes the ego. But that Purusha, remember, in Sankhya is discrete. So the Purusha that I am is different from Argyapatra, who will correct me on the pronunciation of the word Patriya, and Viranatha, and Dantadas, and Pushpa, and Yashodhara. These are all egos, but behind each and every one of these egos is a Purusha that's unique. So there's a Janam Purusha, an Asha Purusha, a Nish Purusha. There are all these different Purushas, Daile Purusha, but they're all inactive, inert, witnessing beings. That too gets devoured. So this sense of separation, by the way, here language breaks down. We're talking about a very subtle meditative experience. But language breaks down here, and what you get is the dissolution of even the sense of separation. So this is called Maya Mala, the feeling of one individual knowing subject being separate from another individual knowing subject. So this is devoured by Kal, Agni, Rudra, Kali. And then you experience what is called Bhairava, or this feeling of like universal subjectivity. So you feel like you are the one witness in all witnesses. You feel like everybody or like everything. This is called the Bharita Avastha. It's a state of supreme fullness. So you are now Bhairava. Bhairava is a state of consciousness, by the way. At this point, you have become Bhairava, like arguably capital B, although in Sanskrit there are no capitalized, no proper nouns. But this is Bhairava in the truest sense of the word, as Bharita Tanuhu, the one who is full-bodied, Bhairava. Anyway, but he also gets eaten up, unfortunately. So Mahakala Kali devours the Purusha into Bhairava, the universal self, Shiva. But then, like a praying mantis or like a black widow spider or something like that, comes this Mahabhairava Chandogra Ghora Kali. This is a very secret Kali. Her name is even quite terrifying. Mahabhairava Chanda Ugra Ghora Kali. And she reabsorbs even that Bhairava, even that fully expanded ground. And who can say into what? And this is the Maharta idea of some void unspeakable, some transcendence which is beyond the mind. It's resonant with Attahasa, the terrifying laughter of dissolution. Okay, so these are the 12 Kalis. Now, how do you meditate in this way? Basically, you just meditate on everything. This is the way to practice with the 12 Kalis. You just kiss and drink wine and get tattoos and get pierced and step on a sharp object or see some red car drive by or listen to a child giggle or, argue with your partner or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. All these experiences in the world, they're all mundane experiences. And that's important because any experience whatsoever is coming into being because of these 12 kalis, is being sustained in experience by the 12 kalis, and is being reabsorbed into the ground out of which it came by the 12 kalis. So all you have to do is attend to your life. And so you can practice this with chocolate, with wine, with whatever. And that's why Abhinavagupta in chapter 4 of Tantrasara says it's good to practice with the beautiful. So the Panchamakaras, the idea is that they are beautiful, they're desirable. Meat is tasty, fish is tasty, wine is tasty, intoxicants can be thrilling, and of course sexual union. And they go so far as to even say the touch of sexual fluids is itself inherently aesthetically pleasing. So it doesn't matter what you find aesthetically pleasing. It could be music. Vijnana Bhairava Tantra verse 73 discusses music as a sadhana, and then verse 72 discusses food. And I love the word that they use, vrijhimbhini, the unfurling, blooming taste of some delicious food in your palate. Like all of these things appear sensual, but they're not indulgent. And here's why. Because again, that's no problem. That's fine too. But the difference here is that we're not merely consuming for, like, let's say, appetitive consumption. It's not merely to, let's say, like, titillate the senses. It's to encounter beauty and then follow that beauty into dissolution. So anything will do, anything. And so the Vijnana Bhairava will use like getting a piercing as a practice, or in one practice, running away from a battlefield. I don't know how often we do that, but I guess if, maybe if you fight with your spouse and then you run to the other room, that's one modern way of interpreting running away from the battle. Or like putting your phone down after you've been in the Discord for far too long. That's also running away from the battlefield. I don't know how people find our Discord, you guys. Like, I'm too old for it. Like, I don't understand Discord at all. It's one generation after me, I guess. So I'm like confused. But every time I go there, I'm like, wait, why are there all this, like, why is there all this ISKCON propaganda and like what's going, like, I'm like, I don't think you understand the vibe here, you guys. But sometimes there are like debates that happen in there, and like maybe you're on the comment threads of a Facebook post or something. Oh, I just aged myself. But then that's like running from the battlefield. If you like step away from that, I don't know. That could be a practice. or just spinning around in a circle and then falling down. That's another practice in the Vijnana Bhairava. So all the modalities in the Vijnana Bhairava are based on these 12 Kalis and on the fact of experiencing itself, or the experiencer experiencing itself. So let's come back to this idea of the four. Notice there are four in each thing: Shrishti, Rakta, Stitinasha, Yama, and then Sanghara, Mrityu, Rudra, Martanda, Paramarka, Kala, Agni, Rudra, Kali, Mahakala, and Mahabhairava, Chanda, Ogra, Gora. So like there are four in each one. Right? So notice that these four correspond to another set of three. The known object, which is called the immanent, Aparā, the transcendent immanent, the act of knowing itself, called Parāparā, and the knower, the pramatar, who is here called Parā. So prameyam, pramana, pramatar, the known, the act of knowing, and the knower. These three are also understood to be goddesses. So now we transition from the Krama and come to the Trika. So in the Trika, there is a devītraya, a trinity of goddesses. And of course, they have their consorts. So Parā, the goddess who is depicted as a youthful woman of 16, who is radiant white in color, who's holding a book and a pot of nectar and a trident and showing the chin mudra, very much like Saraswati. So she is seated on Bhairava Sadbhava. And then to her right is Parāparā, who is depicted as like a slightly older woman, like a middle-aged woman, who is red in color, holding various things, and she's seated on Ratishekara Bhairava. And then to the left of Parā is this emaciated, very fierce-looking goddess, Mahachanda Yogeshwari, like a hag, like an older woman, and she is seated on Navatma Bhairava. So there are these three Bhairavas along with their three Devis. And they, look at this, correspond to the act of knowing the known and the knower respect. They're all of them also nodes in consciousness. Just like the 12 Kalis are something that occur within consciousness, so too are the three goddesses of the Trika, just different aspects of consciousness. Shiva, Shakti, and Nara, you could say, are the knower, knowing, and known. Shakti is that Parāparā, the transcendent immanent. But this is the Shakti Traya, the trinity of Shaktis. Okay, so now there's a very complex meditation involving them, because there's one in which all three exist. And so this would be Matri Sadbhava according to the Malini Vijayotara, but in Abhinava Gupta's case, this is Kali Kala Sankarshini, the one who devours it all. And so she could be argued to be the one in the center, and these three are all within her, and from these three you get the 12. So hopefully we can see that. But hopefully you can also see how all of them are being interiorized and internalized and understood within the context of dynamic non-dual consciousness. So let's come to these three goddesses. The practice is astoundingly beautiful. And of course, there's a mandala that we get called the Trishulabja mandala and the Tri Trishulabja mandala. There are all these very complicated kind of Kala Chakra looking diagrams that you can work with. But the interior meditation is so sweet. So we just visualize a trident. And upon the trident, all the various tattvas are placed. So here's the second meditation. The first meditation was just any cognition. Oh, I should show you something. In that quote that we got from Shrittikanta, I provided another quote from the same text. Here Shrittikanta says, Shiva Swabhavaiva Shakti na Vastvantaram Iti Ekam Eva Shiva Vyapadesham Shakti Vyapadesham Cha Vastu Tattvam Na Purvam Kinchit. So the essential nature of Shiva is Shakti. Shiva Swabhava Eva Shakti. She is not a separate reality. And that which is Vyapadesha, defined as Shiva or called Shiva, is verily the same thing as that which is called Shakti. But now look at the last claim. Cha, Vastu Tattvam, and that reality, na apurvam, it's not weird or odd or transcendent or bizarre. It's not in the slightest, kinchit, it's not in the slightest weird or bizarre or odd. You know what this means? It's present in each and every experience. It's not something other than this moment. Like Alan Watts has a good quote here. It's like if you are presented with a clay pot and you get the idea that the clay is something other than the pot, he calls that the crackpot philosophy, which is what most religions look like. It's like abstracting God somewhere and then looking for God everywhere but here, everywhere, every when but now. It's always something that happens later. But the claim here is so profound that like Kali is right here, right now. Swami Vivekananda, he was asked, have you seen God? And his response is, we have never seen anything but God. You know? Kali is that goddess who I call Colleen by mistake. Kali is that goddess who I call Rita by mistake, or Chris by mistake, or Dile by mistake. That's Swamiji's quote also. I worship that God which people call man by mistake. This is a main claim that like this is it. I'm experiencing it now. We've never not seen it. And that's why we say Cha Vastu Tattvam Na Purvam Kinchit. But obviously we don't see it very deeply. That's why. So even if we say, okay, this is it, we're like, big whoop, good for it, but what about me? Because I'm not experiencing the bliss of Kali Darshana, Like I hear about the experience of this four-armed black screaming woman with wild hair, and there she is, and covered in blood. I'm like, and this is the Darshana, this is the mantra siddhi. I chanted my mantra like 20 to 100,000 times, and now here she is. Like, that's what we expect. And in fact, that's what we get, no doubt. But if we were able to do that with every cognition, imagine that. And in truth, every cognition, if followed to its logical end, will give you this. And this is what we're praying for, to see reality as it really is, to see beyond the surface. So I'm going to stop here and just ask, are you good for a little more, or do you want to do a Q&A? You're okay? Okay, really, you guys, like, I don't mean to hold you hostage. Like, last week I had a moment of reflection. I'm like, bro, I just like zoned out and just talked like for 3 hours. I didn't even know that it was 3 hours. And I was like, oh, that might have been actually excruciating, unless you're like really, really, really into it, which most of you are, like then it would be fun. But some people here, just, like, we're just learning, we just came to this for the first time, so I just want to be sensitive. But I can go to the Q&A now if there's any desire for that. Otherwise, I just mop up a little more, like just a little more meditation, just one more thing. And this has to do with the Trika, the Trinity of Goddesses. So you already learned about the 12, and the 12 are just the 4 mapped onto the 3. But now the 3 can be visualized as being mounted atop the trident. Oh, actually, let me take you to let me just pull up this. I have the translation. I'm not really happy with the translation at all, but let's see if we can find these 3 verses. The one that goes, Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairava yoginim matarmana prameyamsha shula bhuja kritaspadam, or param bhairava yoginim. Okay, here we go. Okay. So I just want you to see the verses too with me. So Abhinavagupta gives these 3. And you can also like, there's a beautiful mantra where it's like Tri Vidyaye Namaha. I praise those 3 Vidyas, those 3 goddesses. Om Sa Tri Vidyaye Namaha. That's a mantra for all 3. But now Abhinavagupta gives us 3 mantras. Actually 4. There's a 4th one, but I'm just gonna give you the first 3. Oh no, let's do all 4. So these 3 mantras are for these 3 goddesses. So one way to connect to them is to just chant these mantras, and they all express something very profound about the 3. He starts with Parā, goes to Aparā, and then goes to Parāparā, and then finally describes them all. So here's the first mantra. Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairava yoginim matar mana prameyamsha shula bhuja kritaspadam. So prameyamsha shula bhuja kritaspadam. So this is a profound verse. There's so much we can explore here, but we'll just try to do it like simply. Naumi, I praise that goddess who is Pratibha, creativity, or the flash of insight. So Acharya Staneshwar Tamalsanaji translated Pratibha as creativity. And I was so inspired by that. I never heard that translation before. But Pratibha, sometimes we translate it as insight or intuition. Chit means consciousness. So I salute that intuitive consciousness or that creative consciousness. Her name is Parā. So I salute that goddess who is the creativity of consciousness, Parā Devi, who is inseparable from Bhairava, who is in sexual union with her Bhairava. She is Pramatar, the knower, Pramana, the knowing, and Prameya, the known. And she is on top of the trident, the Shulambuja. She's seated atop the lotus, which is mounted atop the trident, which is in my own heart. So she's on the trident throne, which has its prong as the trinity of knower, knowing, and known. So the first thing I want to point to here, and we can even see in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra in verse 106, it tells us that most of us aren't interested in the trinity. We're only really interested in the grahya and the grahaka, the object and the knower of the object. But the yogi is not like all the other girls, it says. The yogini, she focuses on the link between the two. In other words, she's more interested in experiencing. She's not interested in just the experiencer or the experience. She's excited about experiencing. But notice the trinity here, the triad of experiencer, experiencing, experienced. These are the constituents of every single experience that we have in the world. Every single one. So every cognition is knower, knowing, known. So this is Parā. She's manifesting herself in each and every moment. But then here we visualize her as being on a lotus mounted atop the trident. So this is the meditation that comes from the Malini Vijayotaro Tantra, which we'll do in just a moment. Then we get this idea. Naumi Devim Sharirastham Nrityato Bhairavakritehe Pravrin Megha Ghanna Vyoma Vidyulekha Vilasinim. I praise that goddess who abides in the body of the dancer, Nataraja. Natar means like theater. So Nrityato Bhairava means the one who is a player or dancer. So this is Kundalini Shakti, you could say, because it abides in the body. And I praise that goddess in the body who is beautiful and playful like a streak of lightning. So again, the idea of Kundalini streaking up the Shushumna Nadi. But she's a beautiful, playful streak of lightning against the cloudy sky of the monsoon season. Right now, it's the monsoon season. I'm getting calls from all my friends in India, and many of them, some of their houses are all destroyed. Like tonight, I'm calling with somebody, and it's just so sad, like it's just his family. Like, what are they gonna do? His whole house is flooded, all the stuff is washed away. Like, it's just such a tragedy, like this monsoon season. Your whole life can change in an evening because the Ganga floods and whatnot. So it's kind of terrifying. The world is terrifying. And when you look at the sky full of black clouds, bunched up storm clouds, you're like, this could be the end of my village, the end of my home, like the end of my life. And she is that beautiful streak of lightning flashing across it all. Just imagine like a red flash across black. Or like imagine like a wild, terrifying laughter or something like that. So that's kind of the bhava, the rasa of this dramatic verse. So she's Kundalini, she's Aparā, she's Kali, she's Chamunda, she's Mahagora, she's Chanda Yogeshwari. Okay, then comes this next verse about Parāparā. Deeptya Jyotish Tata Prushta Dhedha Bandha Trayam Spurat Sta Jnana Shulam Shatpaksha Vipakshotkartana Kshamam. So this is a reference actually to the Malini Vijayotaro Tantra, because the first verse of that is all about the Vipaksha Shotkartana Kshamam, the one that slices through. So may the shining trident of wisdom, whose masses of blazing light have incinerated the triad of dualistic bondage, meaning the three malas, remain capable of cutting away all views that are contrary to the right view. I just quoted Wallace G here, so I thought Haris G's translation of this verse was so much better. And I liked it a lot. So this is a good translation. And then we have this idea. Swatantriya Shakti Krama. Okay, now you get the idea of Krama. So this is where Abhinavagupta has installed a Krama core into his Trika exegesis. So Swatantriya Shakti Krama Samshish Krisha. And so this idea of Shiksha or Krisha is one of the names of the goddess. Kramat Mata Cheti Vibhor Vibhutihi Tareva Devītraya. So this is verily the trinity of goddesses. Devītrayam Antarastam Anutaram Me Pratayat Swarupam. So Anutara means the absolute, and it's the name of Abhinavagupta's system, the Anutara Trika. So the power, the freedom, the ever free one, who emits the sequence of creation, becomes the sequence, and is the all-pervasive devourer of that sequence. This is the devītraya. This is verily the trinity of goddesses. May they remain present in me, always revealing their true nature to me. May the highest reality always reveal itself to me. So this is Abhinavagupta's prayer to the four deities. Really, the three deities were held in one deity. But notice, in the very first verse, he's already given you the highest teaching, that the 12 Kalis are essentially just these three moments of the object, the knowing, and the knower. And you can follow it. You can go from the knower to the known, and then from the known, it follows that you can go backwards to the knower, and beyond even that, to the one in which knower, knowing, and known appear. So the meditation for this is very beautiful. We're invited to visualize our Shushumna Nadi has become a trident. At the base of the trident, 4 finger widths below the navel, is the bulb, the kanda. And this is the 5 elements. And so we start with earth. And there are various mantras like Kshlam, like Shvim. There are very beautiful bijas that are offered. But you can just think, Harim Adhara Shaktaye Namaha, or Lam Prithivye Namaha, the earth element. And then Vam, the water element, and then Ram, Agnaye Namaha, the fire element, then Yam, Vayave Namaha, the wind element. So these are 4, and then pervading the 4 is space. So you're meditating below the navel for a little while. So that's beautiful. So just bringing your attention to the kanda, to the bulb below the navel. The dantian, if you are practicing qigong or tai chi, that center. So that's the center of energy, and that's the world. Ganapati is here. Muladhara chakra, like here's the entire universe, and there's so much energy there, and this is where usually we're stuck. Then we feel the Shushumna Nadi. So feeling like you can breathe nicely and evenly through both nostrils, we chant the mantra Ham Anandaya Namaha. Ananta is the Shushumna Nadi. Ham Anandaya Namaha. And then at the upper palate of the mouth, there's a square, a chatushtaka, and there's like Aishwarya, Anashwarya, there's Vairagya, Avaragyaya Namaha. Like all of these are installed, and we don't need to get into that now. But then just meditate on the upper palate of the mouth for a moment. And then just a bit above that, we meditate upon the center. It's kind of like just below the center of the brain. And here we visualize a knot. This is the knot of Maya, the Rudra Granthi or the Maya Granthi. And there are three layers, the Urdhva Chadana, the Adha Chadana, the upper layer, the lower layer. But in other words, it's like the Maya Mala, the Karma Mala, and of course the Anava Mala, any triad of obstructions. And then as you exhale, feel like you're piercing that knot in the center of the brain and entering into the Shuddhadvan or the Shuddha Vidya Tattva, which is properly speaking in the center of the brain. And then a little higher than that, which is in the center of the forehead, is the Ishvara Tattva. At this point, you can visualize a lotus. And seated, not seated, but lying down on that lotus is Sadashiva, otherwise known as the Mahapareta, the supreme ghost. He is Shavarupa Shiva. So Lord Shiva is lying down, and his navel terminates at the crown of your head. So there's a mantra, of course, for him. Om Saum Sadashiva Mahapreta Padmasanaya Namaha. Of course, there are mantras for everything along the trident, but we just will focus on the main ones. Then from the navel of Sadashiva or Shavarupa Shiva, you'll see three prongs of the trident emerge. The central trident terminates, or the central prong terminates in a lotus upon which is installed Bhairava Sadbhava. Om Hum Bhairava Sadbhavaya Namaha. Om Hum Bhairava Sadbhavaya Namaha. Om Hum Bhairava Sadbhavaya Namaha. And of course, sometimes we install the Urdhva Vaktara, the Pashima Vaktara, the Purva Vaktara, Dakshina Vaktara, Uttara Vaktara. You can install his 6 faces and all of that. But right now, just imagine he's there. And then seated on top of this Bhairava is Parā, Param Bhairava Yoginim. She is in sexual union with him, sitting on top him. And she is this beautiful, resplendent white deity, radiant like moonbeams. To the right, we visualize Ratishekara Bhairava. Om Hum Ratishekara Bhairavaya Namaha. And seated on top of him is Parāparā, who is red in color and slightly older. To the left, we visualize Navatma Bhairava. And then seated on top of Navatma Bhairava, Om Hum Navatma Bhairavaya Namaha, is Aparā. Meditating on Parā. Om. So, meditating on Parāparā. Sraum. Meditating on Aparā. Hari. And as you flow up the trident, the various chakras are accounted for. The first 5 are in the bulb. Actually, the first 4 are in the bulb, and the 5th permeates throughout the whole trident, the Akasha Tattva. Then, of course, you have Prakriti in the Talu. You have Purusha, and then, of course, you have the Maya Tattva with its 5 Kanchakas. And then you enter into the Shuddha Vidya Tattva, the Ishvara Tattva. But Sadashiva Tattva is in the crown of the head. Once you go out through the crown of the head, so when you exhale, feel you are emanating or flowing out through the crown of the head, you enter into what is called this transmental plane. Shakti, Vyapini, Samana, Unmana. You might know some of these terms. So Bindu to Nada, Nada to Nadanta, Nadanta to Shakti, to Vyapini, to Samana, and to Unmana, and then beyond. So all of these deities in the prongs, the gra at the tip of the trident, are in this Shakti, Vyapini, Samana, Unmana plane, beyond even Nadanta. So it's a transmental plane of pure non-dual consciousness. So really, as you exhale, focus on the space above your head. we say like 12 finger widths above the crown of the head, or like 3 fists widths above the crown of the head. Mushtitraya or Dwadashanta, like there's so many ways to understand, but really just feel the space above and feel that this space is the space of these 3 goddesses. Lord Shiva is lying down, Sadashiva, and he's looking up at this space and laughing, the maniacal laughter of dissolution, attahasa. So meditating on the space above your head, feel like it is resonant with sound. All right, so these are actually goddesses, and of course they are worshipped also. Like we hold the skull bowl in the left hand and we flick wine upon the tongue and offer tarpanam like that. So there's ways to worship them internally, visualizing the worship, or actually doing an external worship. But we'll leave that there for now. And the point I want to make now to close all of this off is this. Notice how all of these are cremation ground energies. They were encountered, like I said last week, in the context of cremation ground sadhana by the early Kapalikas and Kula yoginis and what yogini kulas and whatnot. But what they discovered, they quickly learned from these goddesses were interiorized. You know, like these energies can be contacted in the cremation ground and actually worshipped with liquor and other things in an external way, in an Aparā kind of way. But then through that, we enter into the Parāparā, and through that, we enter into the Parā and beyond. And now we know those 15 yoginis, those bloodthirsty yoginis, are my own 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action, and my 5 pranas. Those 12 Kalis are my own sequences of knowing, knower, and known. And those 3 goddesses are none other than the trinity of knowing, knower, and known. And they're all ultimately emanations of and appearances within the One. And that One is the most important tattva. What is the main tattva? Tattva 37, Kali Kala Sankarshini. And what does that mean? Tattvamasi. Somebody asked, how many tattvas are there? Because they were asking like 24, 25, 36, 37. And our only response was this: there is only one, Tattvamasi, and that thou art. So I pray to all of these goddesses, Panchadasha Yoginis, Kali, Kapalini. I pray to Kulla, to Kurukulla. I pray to Virodhini and Viprachitta. I pray to Ugra and Ugra Prabha. I pray to Deepta, Neela, Balaka. I pray to Ganna. I pray to Matra, Mudra, and Mita. I pray to all the Kalis, Nitya Shodashi Kalis. I pray to the 12 Kalis. I pray to the Mahavidyas. I pray to Parā, Parāparā, and Aparā. I pray to all of these energies who are verily my own energies. Salutations to all these bloodthirsty yoginis. Come, come, drink this blood, eat this flesh, possess me, for I am thy possessor, for I am Bhairava. Om. And upon me dances Kali Kala Sankarshini, the radiant void, the resonant laughter in the silence of consciousness. May this be an offering at her lotus feet. Om Saho Trividyaye Namaha. Om Saho Savaranaye Paraye Namaha. Om Srom Savaranaye Parāparaye Namaha. Om Hrihi Savranaye Aparaye Namaha. Aparaye Namaha. Om Kala Sankarshinye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanam Astu. John. Oh, and there's a bonus secret here. Ramakrishna, Ma Sarada, Swami Vivekananda. Om, peace, peace, peace. John.